Welcome back to Village in Motion this Friday, June 15th. What a beautiful day it is outside. And folks, do you realize this weekend coming up is the first weekend in 7 weekends it's not supposed to rain. So stay with us till the end of the show today and then go out and enjoy the beautiful day. And speaking of staying with us until the end of the show today, we've got a really special guest with us at this time, Stephanie Reinheimer, who is one of our social workers. And Stephanie, we are so glad to have you with us.
I'm always happy to be here.
Great. You are a social worker in independent living, correct?
I am, yep. I'm one of 3 of the social workers that cover independent living.
Okay. And the 3 are?
So Sue Frankie, she's our lead social worker. She is right here in Village Square.
Okay.
Then we have Elena Keitel, who is kind of our second longest social worker. She's over in Hunter's Crossing. Mm-hmm. And then I started this past fall, and I am in Town Center.
Okay. And your area of responsibility is?
So my office is in Town Center, but I cover 4 buildings. Hopefully I'll remember them all. We've got Parkview, Walden Court, and then we've got Grove Terrace and Madison Green.
Okay. And if somebody wants to get in touch with you, how do they do that?
It's pretty simple. My extension is 604-4615. Okay. And then my office is, the easiest way I describe it is it's located just down the hall from the Potomac Cafe next to the computer lab.
All right. Very, very good. You mentioned to me before we came on camera, it's summertime.
It is summertime.
And people need to be aware of some things, right?
Well, according to the calendar, next Thursday, I wrote it down, June 21st is the official first day of summer. Okay. So I figured we had a perfect opportunity to talk about some summer safety tips and travel tips, right. Most of which we've probably heard before, but it never hurts to get a little kind of recap of it. So we can jump on in if you want.
Talk to me about it. What are some safety tips?
Well, I was going to say, so probably if you took a room of 20 people and asked them what the most common kind of recommendation or information they were given on a #1 summer safety tip, the likelihood would be that many of them would say something along the lines of staying hydrated. And so I kind of have that as my opening and main point. If everyone ignores everything else I say, remember this. And the reason for that is actually as we get older, older adults are more susceptible to becoming dehydrated. Right. And dehydration is one of kind of the main causes of hospitalizations. Right. And there's kind of some clinical or medical reasons why that is. And let me know if I go too in depth here. No but one of the main reasons is we know as we get older, our body chemistry changes. And one of those changes is that we have less body retention. For example, our kidneys are less able to conserve water. And with that in mind, it puts us more at risk as we get older to be dehydrated because it's more severe, even if we lose a smaller amount because we start off with less. So for example, say myself and someone who's 70 go out, we're in the same environment, we're doing the same exercise, sweating the same, that older adult will be more susceptible to dehydration for that reason.
And so therefore we should be drinking water, right?
Exactly.
Not alcohol.
They say alcohol and caffeine actually are 2 beverages which you should stay away from just because they often themselves lead to dehydration. Right. And actually with that in mind, you're absolutely right. You need to be much more intentional about staying hydrated because they say another body change as we get older, our thirst sensation diminishes. Mm-hmm. So for example, all of those cues we get from our body that say I'm thirsty kind of lessen as we get older, so we're less aware of it, and definitely being more intentional about it is super important.
Right. And so social work is very aware of our needs in regards to not only the social functions, but also our physical functioning.
Yeah, I mean, really kind of social work is a support system, and we are certainly not experts in everything, but we have connections and relationship with those experts and can provide education and information to make sure you guys, have the information and facts you need to stay safe in whatever capacity it is we're talking about.
All right. And what about falling, walking?
You know what, that's actually on my list too. So we know, again, that older adults, unfortunately, the statistics are rather high when it comes to falls. And then keeping with the summer theme, often when you're vacationing, you're in a terrain that you're not familiar with, and so the risk of falls is certainly higher. So they have a lot of tips that are probably common sense, but things to pay attention to. So for example, picking the right footwear.
Right.
If we're going to Greece and we're walking up those beautiful steps, probably not advisable to wear heels or loose sandals. You want to stick with the sneakers. I've heard people say minimizing distractions. So
Right.
if you're in a new environment, try to stay off your phone, and really pay attention to the different terrain.
I think for older people, it's easier for us to stay off the phone than just for younger people.
Okay, all right, guilty as charged for sure. But absolutely, and I mean, just being aware of your surroundings. I can't tell you how many times I've had people say, well, I didn't see that curb, and that's kind of was the bane of their existence. But that's a great point to mention.
Well, I found out that not only do you need to be aware of your environment and where you're walking, where you're stepping, but you need not to walk someplace that's potentially hazardous when you see debris. I had the displeasure of falling last Saturday down the steps.
Oh,
at
no.
parking deck, and things had not been cleaned off as they
Okay.
needed to be, and I stepped on something and away I went. So. Yeah.
Definitely so. And even too, paying attention, but also doing some research ahead of time. So if you know you're going to a certain area, get the lay of the land, especially too if you're going to have an assistive device with
Right.
you, make sure it's easily accessible and things like that. But
Okay.
sorry to hear about your fall.
Well, I was sorry to fall, but fortunately I'm okay now,
Yeah.
more or less.
So those are kind of some main tips for you. There are also kind of some other odds and end tips we can keep
Okay.
going over. One thing I thought was interesting is in regards to medications. They suggest either talking to your doctor or your pharmacist for
Right.
several reasons. One, we know that where you store your medications is important. So as temperatures rise and maybe you keep your apartment warmer, just making sure that you're following directions on
Right.
a cool and dark place. And then also side effects. We often have seen that with medications, a symptom is sensitivity to sun. So, as the temps are rising and it's sunnier outside, if you're on something, make sure that you're protecting yourself with clothes and sunscreen and things like that.
Well, all those things sound excellent. You, though, as a social worker, are here with us inside predominantly. What are the things that you really cover? What do you really do for us, or can do for us?
Absolutely, just in general here at Green Spring. So we our slogan is we're your one-stop shop, in particular for resources. So like I mentioned earlier, we've got great connections with the professionals here at Green Spring. We've got connections in the greater area in Springfield. So we're really knowledgeable about the different supports available to you. We often say we're here to support you through transitions or acute things such as your fall.
Right.
Perhaps if you had injured yourself more severely. Is Sue Frankie your social worker?
Sue's my social worker, and she called me
Okay.
to make
Yep.
sure things are okay. in
So
regards to-
exactly like that.
Greatly appreciated.
Right. So we'll call, we'll check in. If you say you had, fractured a hip, we will give you information on the best way to connect with rehab, with your physician, all those sorts of things.
Right.
So really kind of a connecting piece to all of the information and support you may need, and whether it's temporary or long-term, that sort of thing.
So, if there's a death, social workers should be contacted?
We do, yeah. So when we hear of a death, we typically will, whether it's a spouse or a child, we'll give a call, if nothing else, just to express our condolences. But again, just to check in, a death of loved one is in and of itself very traumatic, and so a lot of times there's questions even with the process at Green Spring, who to notify and whatnot, and we can give information on that. There are grief support groups and things like that maybe not right away when we first call, but that first connection establishes the relationship for help down the road.
Okay. With the things that we do, and now that you guys have changed your names from social work to
Resident Services Coordinators, I
Okay.
believe is what we're
and Erickson Living is the only place that name exists. However, we still recognize you as social workers, right?
We are, our title is Resident Services Coordinators, but we're really trying to get the message across that it's just a name change. Our role, our availability, none of that is changing. Exactly what we just talked about, the way we are here in terms of support will stay the same. So it's just getting used to the new title.
Speaking of new things, you said that you have some travel tips.
Well, travel tips, they were a little more generic, but I had a few key points of things that maybe people didn't know. One thing, and I would recommend that if you are traveling in an airport to do your own research, but I did read that in some instances, say there's a family member who isn't super comfortable physically or cognitively to travel on their own, if you contact the airport and airport security 48 hours prior to the trip, you can actually have a companion go to the gate or go to the gate to pick them up, which I think would reduce a lot of stress.
I found that, my wife and I found that to happen. We were on a trip overseas and went through Japan and needed to change planes and had contacted them in regards to my wife needing a wheelchair at that point in time.
Right.
And they met us at the gate and took us to the other gate in the wheelchair, and it was just very, very helpful.
Absolutely, and we would say, you know, in theory, airport and airport staff, they're in the customer service business, so they should be there to make accommodations and make sure it's as, you know, little stress as possible. So your point exactly, you know, be vocal about what you need. People are not mind readers, so if you need a wheelchair, if you need help with an assistive device, let people know, and more than likely they'll be able to accommodate you. That's a great point.
Yeah, very good. Other words of advice?
In general, or?
Yeah, all the above.
I would just say, I mean, staying informed, I think, is your best kind of weapon. You know, being aware, in particular, to the traveling and health safety things. You know, having information on how to protect yourself, what to look for in others, especially when it gets hot outside. Symptoms of dehydration and heat stroke and things like that, and just be prepared. Plan ahead, and that'll hopefully work out for you.
Sounds great. Well, Stephanie, thank you so very much for coming this morning and sharing with us.
Yeah.
And so we all have a safe and enjoyable summer.
I hope so.
Okay. And hopefully we don't need to see you.
Hopefully not, but we're here if you do need us.
Okay, very good. Folks, don't go away. Have some announcements coming up. And the very first one is in regards to Medicare, Medicare Parts C and D, that will be shown this evening at 2 and 8 p.m. And also the Jewish service that will be shown at 5 and 9 p.m. And then on Village Time Machine, Video Time Machine, will be shown the Arlington House from the 7th of July of 2014, and that will be shown at 4 and 7 p.m. both Saturday and Sunday. The concert will be a weekend concert that's going to be shown at on the 1st of May, from the 1st of May at 8 and 9 p.m. In regards to chimes and bells. And then Monday on Village in Motion, Summer Health, Fitness and Nutrition, and Spotlight on History. So, folks, keep tuning in. We like having you. We hope you enjoy what you're seeing. And remember, get out and enjoy this beautiful weather, and the first weekend in 7 that we won't have rain. So enjoy.